Hi, welcome back to, I think, the final lecture for computer concepts anyway. Now, this is the first time I taught this class online, if you're watching this particular video, and I had to get all these PowerPoints and videos together uh, fairly quickly. So I ended up skipping one or two points that I meant to talk about. So this lecture is just to talk about some of those points that I missed. So, first and foremost, formatting. We talked a little bit about this. For example, you can format your hard drive. And what that does is erase everything and put it back into basically a blank slate. Formatting is the process of dividing the disk into tracks and sectors. How data is laid out is one circle around basically is a track. You go in a little bit further, you have another one, and then another one, and then another one. This is how data is stored. When you format, you lay those down again, basically erase all the data that's on there. Of course, you can still access it, probably if you have the right software and technical expertise. But for most people, when you format, all your data is erased. And here's an example of the old Windows format screen. When you install it, it asks if you want to erase everything. Now, I mentioned web pages when we talked about communication devices and things like that, the internet. But a web page can contain anything from text, graphics, audio, video, has built-in connections or links to other web pages. This link links to that page. This page has several links that link to others. Those pages link to a bunch of others, making a big web of links. The processor. Memory and storage devices are housed in a box-like case called the system unit. I think I always skip over this because it's just not a term that I use that much. But the system unit is that box where all your stuff is. If you're sitting at a computer right now, well, on a desktop, for example, the big box where the processor and hard drive and all that stuff is your system unit. And it looks a little something like this. And, of course, a backup. If you format your hard drive or your hard drive gets corrupted or something, you definitely want to have a backup. A backup's just another copy of programs, pictures, things like that. I have a flash drive with everything from tests to files to other things on it. And I try to back it up at least twice a semester. In the beginning, once in the middle, or once in the end, somewhere along in those lines. If you lose your files, they're gone. If you have a backup, then even if you lose them, you can go and grab the backup and you still have them. You should always, definitely back up your computer, at least all the important files. Burn them to a disk, put them on another drive, and put the drive up somewhere. But they should definitely be, copied and moved somewhere safe. Now, desktop computers versus laptop computers. A desktop computer is a good option if you want to work in one place. If you're not going to go anywhere. They're big, they're bulky. They are less expensive than laptops. Laptops tend to be more expensive. They're also more powerful than a laptop because, well, you have more room to work with. You can put bigger and better stuff in it. Now, a laptop, of course, you're going to pay a little bit more because it's mobile. You can move it around. If you're going to go to a restaurant or Starbucks or something, you will bring a laptop with you. Although I have seen somebody drag a desktop into McDonald's before. Literally come in there with a big giant desktop, throw it on the table, walk back outside, come in with a bunch of cables and a big monitor, set it down on the table, ate their food, and connected to the Wi-Fi. So it's not always that someone's going to just bring a laptop, but that's a lot of work. And typically, someone's going to use a laptop if they want to tote stuff around. But desktop computers are good if you're going to stay in one place. They're also easier to upgrade. You can take out every single part and put them back in. A laptop, not so much. Now, the term computer itself, is used to describe a collection of hardware components that function together as a system. What that basically means is your processor, your hard drive, your RAM, speakers, and all these other pieces of hardware function together to do whatever it is you need done. The operating system collects them all together and communicates with them. It sends commands to the processor crunches numbers and gives the information back. It sends sound out to the speakers and then relays that back to you or to whatever program you're using. So a computer is just a collection of hardware that work together, usually to perform some task. Now when we got to the chapter about GUIs, Graphical User Interface, I mentioned how graphics have basically changed everything. But I skipped over the fact that the name of those graphics are usually considered icons. An icon represents an application such as Word or a file or Firefox or something like that. And that represents that program. You click on it, it opens that program, it opens that file. In the back, of course, the old typed commands actually run. But that little icon, that little button, represents that one thing. For example, if you look at my lower right screen here, I've got a pause button because I'm recording, but that button is a little icon that represents when I click on it, pause the video, and so on. And we already talked about a track. That's a narrow recording band that forms a full circle around the disk. And you have several tracks as you go in to the center. Now, we talked about the CPU. We talked about the RAM, communication devices, hardware, but I actually skipped over the motherboard, unfortunately. Now, the motherboard is your main circuit board. This is the thing that everything plugs into. So skipping over is kind of a little bit of a mistake on my part, but we're going to go over it now. This is an example of a motherboard. You see this nice little picture here. Ta-da! Now, motherboards will look a little bit different depending on brands. The colors might be different. Some things might be located in different places. For the most part, this is all the parts and pieces you'll typically find on a motherboard. The CPU goes in this slot right here, for example. In the old days, it was actually a lot harder to install a CPU. You had to line up pins and solder stuff to the boards, and now it's just as simple as you open the latch, and then you drop it in and you clamp it back down. Then CPU is installed. There's usually a fan sitting on top of this because the CPU gets extremely hot. Hot enough to cook things, that's how hot it gets. Now the hotter it gets, the more likely your computer is to mess up. So you kind of want it to stay cool. So there's usually some kind of fan or something sitting on top of it to pull all the heat off. Now here we've got RAM slots. Random access memory. You could have 2, you could have 4, you could have 6 or 8, depending on your computer. But your RAM chips that you've seen before go in these slots. Now the onboard device interface. That would be these boxes you see in the back. If you look at the back of your computer, you'll see a bunch of wires and cables, USB ports, Ethernet cables, your keyboard, your mouse plug into it. That is what an onboard device interface is. It's a place where you can connect devices. And every computer pretty much has this in the back. Now some have USBs in the front, but the actual device interface is in the back. So I can plug maybe my monitor, maybe my speakers and microphone and various other things all connect into this. Graphics ports. And sometimes these can be used for other things, but typically your video cards are going to go in these slots. So this is either considered an accelerated graphics port or just a graphics port. Basically, it's where the video card goes. And what a video card is it can be anywhere from $20 to thousands of dollars, but it takes the video information and processes it. So instead of your CPU processing all that information, the video card will do it instead. For those of you who may or may not play games, if you've ever seen a game run and it looks nice and smooth, it's probably a video card processing it. If you see someone playing something and it's really choppy and everything's kind of jerky and slow, then that may mean the video card's not quite as good or non-existent. The more work the CPU has to do, the slower the program or game will run. So the video card's job is to take the load off. It's to grab all that video information and to process it itself. So the CPU can do other stuff, run other things, and the game or program will run a lot smoother. Now, if you're not interested in games at all, then you won't have to worry too much about having a high-end card or anything. You don't have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on one. You can get by with just, a small one that will do whatever job you need done. If you want to play games at max settings, then you have to invest a little bit more money. But it will actually improve the performance of your computer. Now, the PCI bus is this last thing here. This is the peripheral control interface. This is effectively where any extra slots or expansion slots or anything like that go. So if I wanted to install more USB ports, for example, I might plug them in these slots. Maybe another Ethernet card or any kind of extra little card can probably go in here. Now, this page is just basically a recap of everything I just said. The accelerated graphics card, accelerated graphics port, the video card, PCI bus, the CPU, central processing unit. Now, if you can consider the CPU the brain of the computer, the motherboard would be the body. All of these devices plug into the motherboard, and the motherboard determines how fast of a processor you can get, what kind of processor you can get, how much RAM you can have, and how fast certain things are going to run. So it's one of the first things you look at if you're actually getting a computer. And of course, the onboard device interface. You can say it has connections for mouse, keyboard, among other things. Now, back to viruses, which we mentioned last time. The most common place to get spyware or viruses is simply just by surfing the internet. But it can also be acquired by downloading and installing programs. Maybe you install a program and it installs 2 or 3 others that you don't know about. Or maybe you're just surfing the internet and an advertisement pops up. And that advertisement in the back end has some sort of code that says, hey, if someone sees this ad, install this program. And you'll pretty much never know it's there. Viruses are somewhat similar. A virus will get on your computer either by surfing the internet, sometimes through email. Someone gets infected and the virus will send out emails to all their friends. Hey, check out this picture. This is awesome. And you see your friend sent you this picture and you look and there's a link, and if you click on it, if you're not careful, it could be the virus itself and it'll get on your system and mail out again. If you look carefully at the picture file that somebody randomly sent you, it may say picture.jpg, which that is a picture. But if it has a .exe at the end, then that is not a picture. That's actually a program. And once you click it, you probably will get a virus. Now, there's one more thing that I actually haven't included on here, and I really should, and that would be phishing. It's kind of up there with viruses and other things that are bad, although this is a ransomware. Phishing, think of it like a fisherman fishing. Someone sends you an email, they may say, well, back in the day there was a very popular one called the Nigerian Prince scam. You get an email from a guy claiming to be a Nigerian prince who had access to billions of dollars. And he can't get this money for some reason and needs your bank account. But if he gives you, if you give him your bank account number, he can give you all that money. And then, you can transfer the rest of it to him and he'd let you keep a sizable several $1 million. Sounds like a good deal, right? Almost too good to be true. Probably because it was. I mean, plenty of people said, yes, I want to be a millionaire, and gave them, whoever it happens to be behind the emails, their account information, and they found out promptly that their accounts were completely emptied. So phishing. It can also work with, I've gotten a couple of emails that look like they're from legitimate sites saying my password has changed or some settings have changed, please log in. And when you check it, you see that it actually doesn't take you to the page that you think it does. Whether it's your bank or your game website or something like that. It actually, you click on it and if you look at the address at the top, it's a completely different address. And as soon as you type in any information, they log it and keep it, and well, they own whatever it is you've basically given to them. Now, that is it pretty much for our lecture. The next lectures will be, well, there'll be a lot fewer. You'll have one or so every chapter from this point on. The next lecture will be over Word, which you're going to see next week.